First You Think is a not-for-profit ministry of the First Unitarian Church of Des Moines. Support us at ucdsm.org today.
Good morning. I'm Marsha Carty, she, hers. When Barb asked me to give a reflection on flourishing, my first thought was, what does that mean? One definition of human flourishing is growing, thriving, and living a really good life, learning how not to give up when things get tough. In 2002, my family left the Chicago area and moved to Des Moines in order to spend less time in traffic and more time together. Soon, I met my neighbor, Annette Check. She had been volunteering at the Planned Parenthood book sale since 1964. She told me all about the book sale and how much money was raised for Planned Parenthood education. After scoping me out politically, she asked me if I would like to volunteer with her. I said yes. When I first started, I didn't know anything about what was happening at the Bookworks. Over time, I became friends with some great people and learned about the Bookworks and their mission. Eventually, I became a co-chair for the sale in 2017-2018. Every volunteer did their job, which made my job easier. When COVID hit, we had to close down the Bookworks operation. Since I could not work at the Bookworks, I felt I was not flourishing. I missed people. I missed the work. I missed feeling of being useful to the community. A few years ago, the Bookworks associated with Planned Parenthood ended. After our final sale with Planned Parenthood, a group of volunteers got together and founded Iowa's biggest book sale. This group raised money, found a warehouse, and partnered with the Young Women's Resource Center. The Young Women's Resource Center helps girls and young women ages 10 to 24 who are not flourishing at this time in their life. These women are lacking the basics, such as enough food, diapers for the kids, the knowledge on how to raise children. The money donated from the Bookworks, around $100,000, helps women in the Young Women's Resource Center flourish, giving girls and young women in our community a better life through education and providing what these young women need, such as counseling and effective problem solving and coping skills. Helping others flourish makes me feel good about myself. The Bookworks volunteers and the work we do together has helped me flourish for over 23 years. All of this because I said yes. Not only does volunteering at the Bookworks help me flourish, it helps the community flourish by decluttering one's homes of books, allowing people to purchase books, creating new friendships, and helping support women in our community. Many people in our church volunteer at the book sale. Our next sale is October 15th to 19th. Stop by and purchase some books. Since moving to Des Moines, I continue to grow, thrive, and live a good life. In order for me to flourish, I must take care of myself. I try to do this by eating a healthy diet, exercising, meditating, and trying to get 8 hours of sleep. And for me personally, it is also important to find ways to help others. I look forward to more opportunities to serve the community and the church.
I am going to start this reflection by sharing one of my darkest secrets. I am a mama's boy. It's true. I call my mom almost every single night. This habit started back in the year 2007. My dad was dying of cancer. I found it easier to call every night. My mom and I could simply talk about the mundane, the weather, what we ate for dinner, etc. We talked about life as opposed to death and dying. My dad died in December that year, and I continued to call nightly all the way through yesterday. Despite my mom's loss, I could sense her flourishing in her new life. She reached out to friends and extended family. My mom would have her dinner on the table, hot and ready to eat, when a friend would call her and invite her out for dinner. My mom would put her dinner in the fridge, and out the door she would go. She stayed physically active. My mom skied until she was 80. She was super engaged in her church, took educational field trips around the Detroit area with friends, traveled abroad, and was generally happy. My strategy for flourishing on my own is very much like my mother's. Staying active has allowed me to flourish on my own for years. I played soccer from middle school through college. Shortly after college, I tore up my knee, and suddenly I could no longer participate in something I love. But it was okay. I started weightlifting. It was an activity I did alone, mostly because all of my weightlifting partners tired of me and my ego. I certainly thought I was pretty much a rock star. Time passed and I entered my 40s, and I knew what was coming. Though it was a bitter pill, my strength started to ebb noticeably around the age of 45, but I had a plan. I would start a new activity. I would start flourishing in a different way, swimming. I knew swimming was an activity that I could do and show steady improvement, despite my aging, at least for a while. I was still going strong at the age of 61, and that's when the wheels fell off my ride. That is when the cancer diagnosis arrived. Ouch. Ouch, you say? Not so fast. Does my cancer slow me down? Does the chemotherapy slow me down? Well, yes, but it has given me a reason to pause. My mom is 93 now, and I still call her every night. Due to health reasons, she had to move, leaving Michigan, her church, and her friends. She is much weaker, and her stamina has suffered, and she is not flourishing like she did just 6 years ago. I can hear it in her voice. I mean, it's hard. At 93, she has lost most of her friends. As the youngest daughter of the youngest daughter, she is the last of her family and cousin group. Every night on the phone, I hear a certain sadness about her now, and I worry. The thing is, I don't worry about my mom so much. Well, I do, but I know that I can't fix her or the situation. I worry about my happiness. When it comes to flourishing, my happiness, I have put all my eggs in one basket, one vessel. This vessel, right here. What am I to do when this vessel can no longer feed my need for fulfillment? How am I to flourish? That thought has been a source of concern lately. There may be good news for me. I believe I am learning of other paths that lead towards flourishing along life's way, starting on the day I attended my first Unitarian Universalist church service. My first and most important lesson came from a man named Roger Eam, 30 years my senior, in my church in Palatine, Illinois. Roger advised, start making younger friends. This church has made it easier to befriend folks of all ages. I have found great happiness, one might say flourished, in the association and service with this church. I taught OWL for 2 years, where I got to work with some great people and had the pleasure of making some of our youth squirm. I have taught and mentored in coming of age and participated in Soul Matters and small group ministry. These activities have given me experience discussing the deeper issues of life and my own faith. They had gifted me courage. In the summer of 2022, I underwent a stem cell transplant at Mayo Clinic. At Mayo, the procedure is actually outpatient, and I spent 5 weeks in a group home called the Gift of Life Transplant House. Everyone staying there had undergone some sort of organ transplant. Many of the patients were hurting, yet I was somehow not afraid to approach and engage many of them. The aerospace engineer who had received a heart. This man had a thick accent and very dark skin. I asked him where he was from. When he said Cedar Rapids, When he said Cedar Rapids, I replied that I should have known by his accent. I also engaged a father of 4 from Ames with a rare and deadly blood cancer. Speaking with him, I learned that his children swam for Ames High, around the same time my sons swam for Roosevelt. As we sat in our rocking chairs together, we shared our stories about our homes, our families, our reasons for being at Mayo Clinic, and even our prognosis. We shared what scared us, what was sacred, and what gave our lives meaning. Somehow, we did it without complaining and even shared a few laughs. And every time, without exception, we felt physically better during and after our conversation than before. If not happy, happier. When I'm experiencing a life transition and need a listening ear, I might seek out the pastoral care team or the minister. And I might instead choose the third option. Here at First Unitarian Church of Des Moines, we have a really, really good minister. Yeah, Reverend Seek is great. However, when it comes to ministering to the congregation, I consider him somewhat of a formality. The pastoral care team, though made up of caring and high-quality humans, is also a formality. What I mean is, at this church, I'm here to minister to you, and you are here to minister to me in times of joy, concern, confusion, sorrow, and the rest. I have faith. I have faith that, regardless of our age and physical abilities, we minister to one another. We minister to one another, and that is how we flourish together. Amen.
When I was 15, my brother convinced me to read Dune by Frank Herbert. For those of you who have not had the pleasure of reading it, Dune takes place in a distant future in which humanity has survived a war for its existence against artificial intelligence. As a result of the threat posed by AI, a religious prohibition is developed against making machines in the likeness of the human mind. Thus, the only way for humanity to advance itself in this story is by developing human capacities. Generation after generation of people train particular skills to continue pushing the boundaries of what is humanly possible. Since they cannot advance via technology, they must instead advance themselves. This premise, humanity forced to develop itself without a reliance on advanced technology, set my teenage brain aflame. I became fascinated with the ways people augment and refine the human organism in our present-day reality. I got interested in things like mindfulness, breath work, and physical and intellectual training as methods of becoming a better version of myself, to advance myself as much as I could muster. Now, I certainly didn't develop any superhuman capacities like the characters in Dune, but I did notice myself improving to the extent that I pursued these practices. Throughout my adolescence, I was immersed in a captivation with self-development that would become lifelong, and I knew I was flourishing. When I was 19, I had my first psychedelic trip, which I must say my mother was not pleased to learn. She was worried for my sanity, and I certainly can't blame her, but I was doing the whole forgiveness, not permission thing. My maiden voyage came from a very potent homemade hallucinogenic beverage, which took me on an incredibly intense journey. Early in the trip, I experienced complete ego death, which meant losing any ability to perceive myself as an entity separate from the rest of existence. I lost all sense of who I was or even what I was, despite remaining completely awake and aware. It was simultaneously the most profound disorientation imaginable and a mystical connection to the wholeness of reality. I have never more clearly felt myself to be a thread in the tapestry of existence, and I was profoundly grateful for the experience. But that was only the beginning. One of the most instructive aspects of this trip was watching my sense of self reconstitute in real time. piece by piece, my realization of what I am returned to me, but gradually enough to allow me to recognize the significance of each facet. I spent the rest of my journey earnestly reflecting on what it meant to be this person people call Elijah, who is a member of this species, who is a dweller on this planet, who has these relatives, who keeps these friendships, who has made these commitments. It was an exhausting inventory of my personhood, but it gave me invaluable insight into who I am and how to live my values. I was keenly inspired to be the best version of myself I could, and I knew I was flourishing. When I was 22, I started graduate school training to become a mental health counselor. There I learned the ingredients for psychological well-being, which also meant learning the many ways the human mind can get itself into trouble. My understanding of the human condition expanded very rapidly. Given my previously mentioned fascination with human development, my education was completely engrossing. I was thrilled to learn so many diverse perspectives on mental health, and it was incredibly gratifying to gain the skills necessary to assist others in establishing healthy lifeways. To be in dialogue with human wellness, both intellectually and practically, was the culmination of my education. It was the confluence of my personal interests, my professional development, and my path to offering my humble little contribution to healing the world the best I can. And I knew I was flourishing. I wanted to share these experiences with you because I have a sneaking suspicion my paths to flourishing are a bit different than yours. It feels worth emphasizing that our shared value of pluralism applies because all too often, well-intentioned efforts to support each other turn prescriptive. I could have never predicted what influences would catalyze my flourishing, and I won't presume to know how you find yours. From what I can tell, the only reliable route to a life well lived is one uniquely tailored to the seeker. The other through line I see from my stories is this. When I am flourishing, I am allowing myself to be transformed. I must admit that when the UUA introduced the new shared values, transformation was the one that was the hardest sell for me. All the others seemed like no-brainers. I mean, who's going to argue against equity and justice? Okay, on second thought, don't answer that. For me, though, when it came to transformation, some conservative instinct of mine was initially wary of overvaluing change, probably concerned about seeking change solely for change's sake. But as I reflect on the different faces with which my flourishing has presented, I see that each of these memories is a story about how I was transformed into a version of myself with updated sensibilities and deepened values. To resist change is a natural instinct, but to embrace life's efforts to change us is to flourish.